All right, ready to dive deep into a sugar-free world?
I am always up for a challenge. Sounds like we're going to be talking about what happens if you cut out sugar for 2 weeks.
Exactly. We're going to be unpacking a YouTube video by Dr. Berg. It's called What Happens If You Stop Eating Sugar for 14 Days?
Okay, I'm familiar with Dr. Berg. He has some interesting ideas about health and nutrition.
He does, and this video is packed with insights.
What kinds of things does he cover?
Well, everything from breaking those sugar cravings to some pretty surprising potential benefits like losing, get this, up to 13 pounds of fluid in just a week.
Wow, that's a lot.
Hmm.
But I'm guessing that's mostly water weight.
Yeah, he talks about how sugar can cause our bodies to retain fluid, so cutting it out could lead to a pretty noticeable shift on the scale.
That makes sense. So we're going to be exploring those immediate impacts, but also some of the longer-term potential benefits of ditching sugar.
Right. And we'll definitely be encouraging you to think critically about the information and consider how it might apply to your own life. But first, let's start with something I know a lot of people struggle with, those intense sugar cravings.
Oh, yeah. Those can be tough to overcome. It's like a constant battle.
Well, Dr. Berg suggests that a big part of breaking that cycle is stabilizing your blood sugar.
Makes sense. It's like those sugar highs and crashes. You eat something sugary, you get that burst of energy, and then crash. You end up feeling even more tired and craving more sugar to get that energy back up. It's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that he suggests that eliminating sugar could actually help to reduce those cravings.
But doesn't cutting out sugar just make you feel even hungrier?
That's a common concern. But Dr. Berg suggests that the opposite might be true. It all comes down to insulin sensitivity.
Right. Insulin is the hormone that helps our cells absorb glucose for energy.
Hmm.
But when we're constantly consuming sugar, our cells can become resistant to insulin.
So it's like our cells are saying enough already, they're overloaded with sugar, and they're not responding to insulin as effectively.
Exactly. And the problem is that insulin resistance doesn't just block sugar from entering the cells. It can also prevent other vital nutrients from getting in.
So even if we're eating, our cells might not be getting the fuel they truly need.
And that's a big part of why we feel hungry all the time, even if we're eating plenty of calories.
That makes sense. So by reducing our sugar intake, we can actually improve our insulin sensitivity.
Exactly. And when our cells can properly absorb nutrients again, we feel fuller for longer, and those intense cravings start to diminish. It's like finally giving our cells the nourishment they've been craving.
I love that. So we've got curbed cravings and potentially feeling less hungry, but what about energy levels?
Oh, that's another area where Dr. Berg suggests we might see a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
He explains that those blood sugar spikes and crashes we were talking about, they don't just impact our hunger, they can also drain our energy throughout the day.
Right. It's like running our car on fumes. Eventually, we're going to sputter out.
Exactly. But by cutting out sugar, we can stabilize our blood sugar and provide our brains with a steady supply of energy.
That's a game changer, especially if you're someone who struggles with those afternoon energy slumps.
Absolutely. And Dr. Berg even suggests that reducing sugar could lead to increased mental clarity, reduced brain fog, and better concentration.
Wow, I can already feel my brain thanking me. And it's not just about our brains, right? What about something a little more tangible, like weight loss?
Oh yeah, Dr. Berg definitely touches on that. He suggests that giving up sugar could lead to some pretty significant weight loss.
Yeah,
Remember that 13 pounds of fluid we talked about earlier? Well, that could be just the beginning.
seriously. That's amazing. But does that initial weight loss mostly come from shedding that excess water?
Yeah, he explains that initially, a lot of the weight loss we might see in those first 2 weeks might be attributed to water weight. But after that, we might start to notice more significant fat loss.
So it's like a double whammy. First, we shed that excess water, and then our bodies start to burn stored fat for energy.
And this isn't just about the number on the scale. Dr. Berg points out that many people notice their clothes fitting better, particularly around the waistline.
So not only are we feeling better on the inside, but we're also seeing those positive changes reflected on the outside.
Exactly. And it's not just about aesthetics either. Dr. Berg emphasizes that reducing fluid retention can also be beneficial for heart health. It's all connected.
I love how he highlights the interconnectedness of our bodies. It's not just about isolating one specific aspect of our health. It's about recognizing that everything works together.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this exploration of sugar so fascinating. It impacts so many different aspects of our well-being.
Okay, so we've got curbed cravings, potentially feeling less hungry, a boost in energy, maybe even some weight loss. What else could giving up sugar do for us?
You might be surprised to hear this, but Dr. Berg also suggests a strong connection between sugar and mood.
Really? You mean those sugar highs aren't all they're cracked up to be?
Well, remember those blood sugar swings we talked about? They can really mess with our mood. They can lead to irritability, anxiety, and even low energy, which can feel a lot like depression.
So what happens when we stabilize our blood sugar?
Dr. Berg suggests that we might experience a more balanced emotional state. He even says that going sugar-free could lead to a more positive mood, reduce stress, and even a greater sense of calm.
That's incredible. Who wouldn't want to feel calmer and less stressed? And it might all come down to something as simple as reducing sugar. But wait, there's more.
Oh, there's always more when it comes to this topic. Remember, we're just scratching the surface here. We've talked about a lot of internal benefits, but Dr. Berg also mentions some outward changes we might notice, especially when it comes to our skin.
Now, that's something I think a lot of people can get behind. What does he say about sugar and skin health?
He suggests that reducing sugar can lead to clearer, more radiant skin and potentially even fewer breakouts.
That's amazing. I've heard people talk about sugar and acne, but I never really understood the connection.
Well, it all has to do with hormones. When we eat sugar, it increases our insulin levels.
Right, we talked about that earlier.
And those increased insulin levels can then lead to an increase in androgen hormones.
Androgens.
Yeah, they're a type of hormone. And androgens are linked to acne. So by reducing sugar, we're essentially helping to balance our hormones and potentially reduce breakouts.
So it's not just about what we put on our skin, it's also about what we put in our bodies.
Exactly. It's all connected, isn't it? And speaking of things that are connected, Dr. Berg also talks about sugar's impact on pain and inflammation.
I've definitely heard that sugar can be inflammatory, but how does that actually work in the body?
Well, you can think of sugar as an inflammatory substance. When we consume it regularly, it can contribute to chronic inflammation throughout our bodies. And this inflammation can manifest as pain, stiffness, and even joint issues.
So if we switch from sugar to fat as our primary fuel source,
We could potentially reduce that inflammation and experience less pain.
that's fascinating.
It is. Dr. Berg explains that it takes about 3 days for our bodies to fully adapt to burning fat for fuel instead of relying on sugar.
3 days, that's not too bad. But what about during that transition period? Is there anything people should be aware of?
He does mention that some people might experience withdrawal symptoms during those first few days, headaches, fatigue, irritability. But he says those are totally manageable, especially if you focus on staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, and maybe even supplementing with electrolytes.
Those are all great tips. It sounds like a small price to pay for potential long-term relief from pain and inflammation.
Absolutely. But get this, there's another incredible benefit Dr. Berg mentions: brain cell growth.
Wait, are you saying that reducing sugar could actually help you grow new brain cells?
That's exactly what he suggests. Remember how we talked about ketones being produced when we cut back on sugar?
Right, those ketones are like an alternative fuel source for our bodies.
Exactly. And here's the amazing part. Those ketones might actually support nerve cell growth and overall brain health.
That's pretty remarkable. So not only could cutting out sugar make us feel more focused and alert in the short term, but it could potentially have long-term benefits for our brain health as well.
That's right. It makes you think twice about that next sugary snack, doesn't it? But there's even more. We still need to talk about the potential benefits for our liver and kidneys.
Okay, let's talk about those. What kind of impact can sugar have on these vital organs?
Well, let's start with the liver. Dr. Berg explains that excessive sugar consumption could actually contribute to fatty liver disease.
Wait, so eating too much sugar can make your liver fatty?
It can. Fatty liver disease is basically when fat builds up in the liver, and it's especially common in people with a larger belly.
So it's not just about watching our weight, it's about protecting our liver health, too.
Exactly. And what's even more concerning is that fatty liver disease often doesn't have any noticeable symptoms in its early stages, so people might be harming their livers without even realizing it.
That's scary. But is there anything we can do about it?
The good news is that fatty liver disease is often reversible through lifestyle changes. And guess what's a big part of that? Reducing sugar.
So even if someone has been indulging in those sugary treats, it might not be too late to start reversing the damage.
Exactly. Dr. Berg emphasizes that reducing sugar isn't just about preventing fatty liver disease. It's about giving your liver a chance to cleanse itself and work more efficiently.
Okay, that makes sense. So the liver's all about filtering toxins, regulating blood sugar, producing bile for digestion. It's got a lot of jobs.
It does. And when it's overloaded with sugar, it can't perform those functions as effectively.
So by cutting back on sugar, we're basically lightening its workload, so to speak.
Exactly. And that can have a positive ripple effect throughout the entire body, improving our overall health and well-being. But we're not done yet. We still have to talk about the kidneys.
Okay, what about the kidneys? What does Dr. Berg say about those?
He explains that high sugar intake can put a lot of stress on the kidneys, especially for those with diabetes,
Why is that?
because the kidneys have to work extra hard to filter out all that excess glucose from the bloodstream.
So by reducing sugar, we're helping our kidneys do their job more effectively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about reducing that overload and allowing our body to process things more efficiently.
This is all pretty amazing. We've barely even begun to dive into Dr. Berg's video, but it's already clear that reducing sugar could potentially impact so many aspects of our health.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And
Well-
there's so much more to explore. You know what really struck me? Dr. Berg doesn't just throw the science at you. He makes it fun, like relatable.
I know, like that analogy with the accordion.
Oh, yeah. I loved that. It really helps you visualize how sugar affects your stomach.
He's talking about how our stomachs like expand and contract based on how much sugar we eat. It's a funny image, but it makes sense.
Right. Like a lot of the discomfort people feel, bloating, that kind of thing, might be because of that.
It really drives home the point. But let's be honest, going completely sugar-free for 2 weeks, I mean, that's a challenge, right?
It is. It's really tough. Sugar is everywhere,
It's in everything.
especially processed foods. It's like you have to be a detective.
You really do. You have to read those food labels carefully.
He says, become a sugar detective. I like that. It's like a game.
And it's not just about avoiding the obvious stuff.
Oh, absolutely not.
Like, we all know candy and soda are loaded with sugar, but what about those hidden sugars?
Right. The stuff you don't even think
Well,
about.
those sauces, salad
Eat
dressings,
some yogurts.
granola bars, things like that.
They can be full of sugar,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't even know it.
So what's the best way to avoid those hidden sugars? Besides becoming expert label readers, I mean,
Well, Dr. Berg really recommends focusing on whole foods.
makes sense. Real food.
Yeah. Things like fruits, vegetables, lean protein, healthy fats.
So it's not about depriving yourself?
No, not at all. It's about, like, making a shift, nourishing your body with good stuff.
Instead of filling it with empty calories. I like that. But what about when those sugar cravings hit? Any tips for dealing with those?
He does. Dr. Berg says to find healthy substitutes.
Like what?
So instead of reaching for a candy bar when you're craving something sweet, grab some fruit.
Okay, I can do that. Fruit's good.
Berries are great too. They're naturally sweet.
So we've talked about some of the potential benefits of going sugar-free, but let's be real, are there any downsides, things people should be aware of?
Well, yeah. Dr. Berg does mention that some people might have some withdrawal symptoms.
Oh, like what kinds of things?
Things like headaches, fatigue, irritability.
So it's not necessarily going to be a walk in the park for everyone,
No, not always. But he does say that they are manageable.
and it's probably worth it in the long run, right? If those symptoms are just temporary.
He thinks so. He suggests staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, and maybe trying some electrolytes.
That makes sense. I guess anything new takes some adjustment.
It does. And every person is different. Some people might not even have any issues.
And of course, it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have any health concerns.
Before making any big changes to your diet.
Always a good idea.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was important. Dr. Berg makes it clear that this isn't a quick fix.
Right, it's not a fad diet or anything.
No. It's more about, like, a lifestyle change.
Making a commitment to a healthier way of eating.
Exactly. It's about understanding how sugar affects you and then making choices that work for you long term.
This 2-week challenge is more like a starting point, really.
Yeah. A way to reset,
Retrain your taste buds.
see how good you can feel without all that sugar.
One thing that really stood out to me was how sugar can affect cognitive function.
Oh, yeah. He talks about that.
He suggests that reducing sugar could help us focus better, concentrate.
Even improve memory.
It's like a brain boost.
It is. And it makes sense when you think about it. Sugar can really mess with your brain chemistry.
Those blood sugar swings, they can disrupt how our brains work.
They can. And there's a lot of research that shows that a high sugar diet might actually increase the risk of cognitive decline.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
It's true. And even Alzheimer's disease.
Wow, that's pretty serious.
It is. But on a positive note, that means reducing sugar might actually help protect our brain health as we get older.
So it's not just about feeling sharper now, it's about potentially preventing problems down the road.
Exactly. And who wouldn't want a healthier brain, right?
I know I would. Speaking of feeling better, let's circle back to mood for a moment. Remember Dr. Berg suggesting that giving up sugar could actually improve our mood?
Yeah, he talks about how sugar can mess with our neurotransmitters, especially serotonin.
Serotonin, that's like the happy chemical, right?
It is. It helps regulate mood, sleep, all sorts of things.
So when our blood sugar is all over the place, it disrupts those neurotransmitters, and that can lead to, well, basically feeling lousy.
It can. Mood swings, irritability, feeling down, that kind of thing.
But when we stabilize our blood sugar by reducing our sugar intake, we're essentially creating a more balanced environment for those neurotransmitters to function properly.
Exactly. And that can translate into feeling calmer, happier, more balanced overall.
I like the sound of that. It's amazing how interconnected everything is.
It really is.
And we often think of our physical health and mental health as separate, but they're so intertwined.
What we eat affects everything. How we feel, how we think, even how we sleep.
It's a whole body approach, and that's what I find so fascinating about this topic. It's not just about weight loss or fitting into a certain size, it's about taking care of ourselves on a deeper level.
I agree. It's about understanding that our bodies are amazing, complex systems, and that even small changes can make a big difference.
Like simply reducing our sugar intake. It's a simple change, but it has the potential to create a ripple effect throughout our entire being.
It really does.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the potential benefits of going sugar-free, but what about the long term? Is it realistic to think that people can completely eliminate sugar forever?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I don't think anyone expects us to never eat sugar again.
Right, that's not very realistic.
Dr. Berg even says that there are times when it's okay to indulge a little, like on special occasions, holidays, that sort of thing.
So it's more about finding a balance that works for you.
Exactly. And shifting our mindset. It's not about deprivation. It's about making choices that support our health and well-being.
So it's more about creating a sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah. One that feels good and doesn't feel like a constant battle.
I like that. But what about the social aspect? Food plays such a big role in our social lives. How do you handle those situations where everyone else is indulging and you're trying to stick to your goals?
That's a great point. It can be tricky, for sure.
It can, especially in those social situations where food is a big part of the gathering.
Right, like parties, holidays, even just getting together with friends.
So how do you navigate those situations without feeling like you're missing out or being a party pooper?
I think communication is key.
Yeah.
Just be upfront with people.
Like tell them you're trying to cut back on sugar.
Exactly. They might not understand at first, but once you explain your reasons, most people are pretty supportive.
And it's okay to say no if someone offers you something you don't want to eat.
Absolutely. You don't have to feel obligated to eat something just because someone offers it to you.
It's about setting boundaries and prioritizing your health.
And remember, true friends will support your choices, even if they don't necessarily share the same goals.
Exactly. And if you're worried about feeling left out, maybe you could bring your own healthy dish to share.
That's a great idea. Or even just focus on enjoying the company and the conversation rather than the food.
It's about shifting our focus and finding ways to connect with people that don't revolve around eating.
And honestly, the more you practice making those healthy choices, the easier it becomes.
It's like anything else, practice makes perfect.
It's all about building those new habits.
Creating a lifestyle that supports your goals. And as you said earlier, don't beat yourself up if you slip up. It happens.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're all human.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. Just acknowledge it, learn from it, and move on.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There are tons of resources out there, books, websites, even support groups if you need a little extra help or encouragement.
There's a whole community of people who are trying to reduce their sugar intake, and they're all facing the same challenges and celebrating the same victories.
Exactly. So reach out, connect with others, and share your experiences. We're all in this together.
It really is amazing to think about how much control we have over our health.
It is. When you start to look at all the different ways we can impact our well-being just by making different choices, and a lot of those choices, they're not even that difficult.
Right, like cutting back on sugar, that's something almost anyone can do.
It's not always easy, but it's definitely doable. And the potential benefits are huge. I mean, we've covered so much in this deep dive. Everything from curbing cravings and boosting energy to the potential impact on mood, brain health, even liver and kidney function.
It's mind-blowing when you really stop and think about it. That one simple change, reducing sugar, could have such a ripple effect throughout our entire bodies.
Exactly. And I think what's so powerful about Dr. Berg's message is that he doesn't just present the science, he makes it relatable and actionable. He gives us concrete steps we can take to improve our health.
And he reminds us that we're not alone in this journey.
That's so important. There's a whole community of people out there who are on this path with us, facing the same challenges, celebrating the same
It's
victories.
inspiring, isn't it?
It is. It gives me hope knowing that so many people are committed to living healthier lives. So before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I think the main thing is to just encourage people to keep learning, keep exploring, and keep experimenting. We're all unique individuals, and what works for one person might not work for another.
Right. There's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to health.
Exactly. So it's really about finding what works best for you,
Listening to your body.
paying attention to how you feel.
And don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. There are so many resources available, books, websites, health professionals who specialize in nutrition, and of course, our amazing community.
Absolutely. Reach out, connect with others, share your experiences. We're all in this together.
Well said. And remember, every journey begins with a single step. So if you're feeling inspired to make a change, no matter how small, go for it. You might be amazed at what you discover.
I think you will be.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today, but this conversation doesn't have to end here. We'd love to hear from you. What resonated with you during our deep dive? Have you tried reducing your sugar intake in the past? What were your experiences? Share your thoughts and insights with us. We're always eager to learn from our amazing listeners.
We are.
And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep.